Mississippi, as well as the latent print processing and latent print examination training housed at the GBI Crime Lab. All of this training took about 3 years to complete, and since then I have been partaking in continuous education with different courses and classes throughout the years.
You mainly deal with fingerprints, is that?
Yes, I am a latent print examiner.
I can turn you down.
Thank you, Judge. I apologize. If you would, just kind of tell the jury what you have to do, what type of training. We've heard about some of your training, but kind of just in layman terms, tell us what type of training you have and how do you identify fingerprints?
So with fingerprints, at the GBI we do provide in-house training, so I did have external and internal training on fingerprints, which took about 3 years to complete. But as a latent print examiner, I do both latent print processing and latent print examination. So that includes processing physical evidence for the presence of latent prints, as well as photographing any prints that may be developed on those items. I also am trained in taking known and postmortem impressions, as well as comparing any latent prints. So that's unknown origin prints, meaning we don't know who they belong to, comparing those latent prints to known prints or known individuals. I also utilize the automated fingerprint identification system, that is AFIS, that's the Georgia Fingerprint Database, as well as the FBI's Next Generation Identification System, that is the FBI's database. Both of those are fingerprint databases that we can utilize to try and make an identification on fingerprints. I also will write up my results in official reports and testify in court when subpoenaed.
To get your job, did you have to take any tests or was it competitive in any way?
Yeah, so prior to working at the GBI, we did have to have a bachelor's degree in a scientific field. And then with application to the GBI, we had to successfully complete a visual acuity test. That's essentially looking at each individual's visual acuity to see if you can distinguish between different or minute differences in images and stuff like that. As well as throughout training, we had several different kinds of tests, both oral, practical, hands-on tests, and then written examinations as well.
Now, in your job, you don't have a badge or carry a gun or anything like that, do you?
I do have a badge, but it's just a civilian badge, just saying that I work for the GBI Crime Lab, but I don't have a gun and I'm not a sworn law enforcement officer.
You don't normally go out to crime scenes or talk to witnesses or do anything like that, do you?
I do not. I only work in the crime lab.
And where's your office at? Where's it actually located?
We are located down in Decatur.
And if we could see your office, what would it look like?
My office itself is a cubicle. There's a few of us that share an office. There's a few cubicles in each office, and then we also have the laboratory, which is where we will process all of our evidence.
So you're one of what I consider a CSI type scientist for the GBI, is that right?
I'm not a CSI.
But you are a scientist, I guess, or in the field of science?
Yes, I am a forensic scientist.
And how many fingerprints do you think you've examined in your career?
I don't keep track of a specific number, but easily several thousand, both throughout training and now with having worked several hundred cases.
And how many of those in a year do you actually do? Just trying to do examinations for law enforcement or things like that?
Casework, I complete roughly 20 to 25 cases a month, and each case can involve anywhere from 1 to 200 latent prints that involve comparison. So really it does vary, but I have looked at several thousand latent prints and comparative prints as well.
And is the GBI a professional organization that they're accredited by another organization?
Yes, we are.
And who is that?
The GBI Crime Lab is accredited by ANAB. It stands for the American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board.
Do you have to do any continuing education as part of your job?
Yes, I do.
Tell us about that if you would, please.
With being a forensic scientist, especially in the field as itself, but also within GBI policy, we do have to have continuous education. So we are continuously taking different courses, whether it be online or in person, throughout each year.
Do organizations, agencies, other people in criminal justice, do they ever rely on you for training or opinions just to help with what they do or cases?
Yes, we do work with several agencies, both with if they have any kind of case questions on how they would handle something or how we would handle something, as well as we do help with training as well.
And have you ever testified as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
13 times.
Just this time I'm going to tender the witness as an expert in latent fingerprints examination.
No objection.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we got that out of the way, so let's quickly go to why you're here today. Did you have an opportunity to examine the knife in this case?
Yes, I did.
And that's the knife's been tendered already. It's actually State's Exhibit 83. Judge, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you, just kind of pull the box up and open it. This is the knife in the case. And if you can, the only thing I want to do is, I believe, there it is. What is that number there? I'm pointing to on the box of this knife.
It is the GBI Crime Lab case number.
And what is the number that's on the sticker here on the box?
It is the GBI Crime Lab case number and item number specifically.
Is that the same one you report?
Yes, it is.
I can tell the jury what the DOFS case number is and how we track things.
In this case, the DOFS case number is 2020-1031455. And in our laboratory, each case is given a GBI Crime Lab case number. And each item that is submitted in that crime lab has a specific item number. So in this case, the knife was item 10. And so it's given a barcode with that listed GBI case number and item number. With that barcode, we are able to track the chain of custody. So anytime it moves between an individual in the lab or a storage location, we are scanning that barcode so that it can constantly be tracked as to where it is from the moment we receive it to the moment we release it back to the agency.
Here, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked State's Exhibit 99. I think that's your report, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Judge, I tender evidence now State's Exhibit 99.
No objection. It's admitted.
And may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right, let me ask you a question. What date did you issue this report?
This report was issued on February 18th, 2021.
Let's see if I can get technology to work with me here. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
It states 99 on the screen. And so we've got a DOFS case number on the top right, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
And then below that should report date, is that right?
Correct.
And then it's, what is it, requested service?
The requested service was LP processing, so that's latent print processing on the item submitted.
And then it was requested by the Canton Police Department.
That's correct.
And then we have agency requested by, then subjects and victim under the case individuals.
That's correct.
And what date did you receive the knife in this case?
The evidence was submitted to the GBI Crime Lab on December 11th, 2020. That is not the date that I specifically received it. That's the date that it was submitted to the GBI Crime Lab for testing.
And then we have your expert opinion in this case is what?
Based on latent print processing of this item, I physically and chemically processed it for latent prints with negative results, meaning that there were either no latent prints present on that item or those that were did not have the potential to be suitable for comparison.
And what I want to ask you about that is sometimes when we try just to see if we can get prints off or things like that, and in this case we have the knife submitted to you, tell the jury first what is a fingerprint and what things are you looking for, and then why sometimes even when you know someone may have a knife you don't find a fingerprint on the item.
So going back to what is a fingerprint, on the palms of your hands and soles of your feet, you have a type of skin called friction-ridged skin. So it contains raised portions called ridges, which form different patterns. For example, the pattern on the top joint of your hand or your finger is referred to as your fingerprint. Those ridges don't flow continuously across the surface, however, they form different ridge characteristics. For example, a ridge that flows and suddenly stops is referred to as a ridge ending, whereas a ridge that flows and splits into two, similarly to a fork in the road, is referred to as a bifurcation. So those different ridge characteristics are what I am looking at during my processing, but particularly that's what I'm looking at during my examination to see if I can use those ridge characteristics in a comparison and ultimately make a conclusion of identification or exclusion. With the fingerprints, a latent print, so we use the terms latent print and known print. A latent print is an unintentional or a chance reproduction of those ridge characteristics on the skin when you touch or handle an item. A latent print is not always visible to the naked eye, so it requires us to process it using different chemical techniques in order to render it visible, then allowing us to preserve it and examine it for comparison. Whereas known prints are those that are intentional reproductions of the ridge characteristics on the skin, and those are collected for comparative purposes to any latent prints that are collected at the skin, or at the scene, excuse me. What was your follow-up question afterwards?
Sometimes, why would you not find a fingerprint? What can get in the way of cause a fingerprint? Even though if you know someone held a knife, it may not be there.
There are several factors that can play into whether a print is left on an item at the time it's handled, as well as if it may be developed later on or not. In regards to if a print is left at the time of being handled, some of the factors to consider is whether if there is even some kind of transferable material, either on the skin or on the item being touched. So on that friction-ridged skin, it is lined with pores, which are constantly producing sweat. So that sweat on the friction-ridged skin is what is deposited when you handle an item. If there is no sweat or a residue on the skin when you touch an item, you may not be leaving a fingerprint on the surface, or if you are, it may be too fragmented for us to be able to work with it. So there has to be some kind of transferable material, either on the skin itself or on the item. And when I say a transferable material on the item, if you have blood, grease, paint, even something really dusty, if you have that on the surface and you touch that surface, you can essentially do a takeaway print where you're removing whatever's on that item and you can leave friction-ridge detail as well. So as long as there's some kind of transferable material, you can typically leave a fingerprint on an item. Another factor to consider is the item itself, if it is even conducive to accepting latent prints. For example, a surface that is dirty or very rusty may not be as conducive to accepting prints, as well as an item that is very textured versus an item that's very smooth. The smoother surface, typically the better a latent print may be left on that surface. As well as if the surface is hot or cold, wet or dry, dirty versus clean, all of that can affect if a print is left on the surface. In regards to if a print is developed after handling, one factor to consider is the environment. If it's left out in humidity, if it's hot versus cold, that can evaporate some of the latent print and essentially evaporate any detail that's left in that print, as well as if it was wet versus dry. So if it did rain on that item or if it was thrown into some wet environment, that can essentially damage or remove some of that latent print detail, as well as how the item was handled both at the time it was touched as well as after. So if you touch an item and it's a clean touch and release, you may leave a fingerprint, as opposed to an item that's handled a lot, where if you're moving your hand around a lot on it while using it, or a door handle, which many individuals are constantly using that, so that with door handles or type surfaces like that, it's constantly being handled, so you're constantly damaging or removing latent prints that may be present on that item. So there's several factors that can play into whether a print is left at the time that it's handled, as well as if a print is even developed afterward.
And on this knife, you didn't find any prints, is that right?
That's correct.
Nobody, not the defendants, no one else. You found no prints whatsoever.
Correct. There were no latent prints developed on the item.
And whether or not a fingerprint could be there, it could be because of the type of material, like the knife itself, what it's made out of, could have a factor.
Yes, it could be the knife itself, or in this case, there was reddish-brown residue on the knife, so that could interfere also with any latent prints that may be present.
So blood or a lot of blood can interfere with the leaving of a fingerprint.
That's correct.
Just that's all I have.
I don't have any questions of this witness.
Thank you. You can step down. Call your next witness, please.
Carly Blomquist. Good morning. Yeah, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you can have a seat. Can you state your name and spell it, please?
Carly Blomquist, Carliblomquist.
Okay. Do we want her to adjust her microphone down a little bit? Can you just pull that down just a smidge? Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes. Can you tell me how you're employed?
Yeah, I'm an emergency room physician at Northside Cherokee Hospital.
All right. And can you tell the jury a little bit about your educational background and training?
Yeah, I went to undergrad, pre-med at Emory University, graduated in 2005, and then I went to medical school at Medical College of Georgia, graduated in 2010, and then I went back to residency where I trained based out of Emory University at 5 different hospital sites, including Grady primarily, and then after that, so I finished that in 2013, and I've been a practicing ER physician since then at Northside Cherokee, so for a little over 10 years.
Okay. And in your practice as an emergency room physician, what does that mean?
So a lot of things. There's a variety of patients that I take care of. I don't work at a level 1 trauma center anymore, but I trained at Grady, which was one. We do get occasional traumas, but we don't get the bigger traumas unless they're very, very critical and they have to come to us. But I take care of heart attacks and strokes and sepsis patients, and occasional traumas, car accidents, and then basically patients that are they lose their pulse on the way to a trauma center, so they have to come to us instead.
Okay. And you say on their way to a trauma center. Northside Cherokee ER is not a trauma center?
It's not.
Okay. And does that influence what types of patients are brought to you in like an emergency setting?
Yes. So if there is a serious trauma, then they should go to a trauma center if they can make it there. But if they can't make it there, they go to the nearest ER.
Okay.
But at Grady, which is where I trained primarily, I was there for 3 years. That's a level 1 trauma center, so I do have a lot of experience with trauma patients.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I would tender Dr. Blomquist as an expert in emergency medicine. No objection.
So noted.
I want to talk to you about December the 8th of 2020. Have you had an opportunity to review your records from your treatment of Hannah Nicole Driver?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember that incident, her coming into the ER?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember that independent from your records review?
Yes, I just reviewed the records yesterday for the first time, but I recalled before that.
Okay. And tell me, apart from your review of the records, what you recall in terms of your memory of responding to that incident.
So I was an assisting physician on that case. The primary physician is one of my colleagues I've worked with for 10 years, but I came into shift and there was a crowded room, so I jumped in to see how I could help. So I entered the room and I saw Hannah, and they were securing the airway when I entered the room, and then I just jumped in to see where I could help basically in the resuscitation efforts. Her clothes were bloody, CPR was in progress. I could see stab wounds on the neck that were no longer bleeding, and there wasn't any apparent sign of life. Dr. Albinger had already secured one access in one of her legs, and so I did it in the other leg, so we got more access for medications. And unfortunately, after all the attempts that we tried to get her heart back beating, it was very clear that that wasn't going to happen. I performed the bedside cardiac ultrasound, which we do a lot of times during ACLS before we call it, and we could see that there was no cardiac activity, so that time of death was called.
Okay. You indicated when you entered the room that they were securing an airway. What does that mean?
Intubating, putting on the ventilator machine. So basically, it's just a process that we do where we put an ET tube into the airway and connect it to the ventilator, or bag them until we get life back, basically, and then we'll connect it to the ventilator machine.
Okay. And you indicated when you entered the room, you entered into a crowded room. How many people were working on Hannah?
I don't recall exactly how many people. I would guess around 10, but I don't really know.
Okay. And then you said Dr. Albinger had secured access through one of her legs. What does that mean?
Yeah, so from what I read in the documentation, they were unable to get any peripheral IVs en route, so they didn't have any access to her venous system in order to give the medications that we have to give to get the heart beating back, like IV fluids, epinephrine, bicarb, which is what she had received. So we have to have access somehow. So in an emergency situation, when we can't get access in the veins, which often happens when they don't have any blood, we get access into the bone. So there's a drill that we use in order to gain access into the bone of the leg, and then we can give medications or blood or fluids in that area.
And you indicated that sort of at what point after getting those access points, securing the airway, at what point did you all shift to the cardiac ultrasound to make decisions about whether to continue life-saving efforts or call a time of death?
I believe it was 1502 from the documentation, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. If I show you your record,
that would be helpful,
Okay.
yeah.
May I approach?
Yes.
I think that's when I placed the IO, but let me see. Patient arrived to the ER at 1444. Looks like the patient was intubated at 1500, and that's around when I would have entered the room, because I remember that. And then at 1502 is when I placed the IO in the right knee,
And what is the IO?
the intraosseous line that I talked about with the drill.
Okay, you put that in her right knee, and you said Dr. Albinger had already put one in her left?
Correct.
Okay. And then, what time was that?
That was at 1502, and then at 1509 is when I performed the ultrasound, and then at 1510 is when time of death was called.
Okay. And when you performed the ultrasound at 1509, what did you see?
But there was no cardiac activity, there was no fluid around the heart, basically no sign of life,
Okay.
no sign that the heart was pumping at all.
Was there any other medical intervention you all could have done at that point to preserve life?
Unfortunately, no. She had gotten multiple rounds of epi, she had gotten IV fluids, she had gotten bicarb, and it was clear that the wounds were no longer bleeding. She had lost a lot of blood.
What does that mean, that the wounds were no longer bleeding from a medical physician?
That means that she had basically exsanguinated already. Usually if you're doing compressions and there's still blood in the body, there's going to be blood coming out of the wound every time you do a compression. And that wasn't happening, which makes you think that she was empty.
Okay. You used the word empty. What was that?
Her blood was gone.
Okay. All right. And what time did you all call her death?
1510.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Prior to you jumping in to assist all the other doctors and staff on that day, did you know anything about any of the backstory about how Hannah came to the hospital?
No.
Did you ever find anything out in the course of your treatment or after the fact?
Afterwards, I had heard that her mom was at another hospital.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else with this witness?
No, Your Honor.
You can be excused. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We'll call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state needs to take up something outside the presence of the jury.
All right. We're going to let you be in recess in the jury room. So don't, leave us your notepads. Don't talk to one.
Mr. Spillers.
36.
All right. And you're wearing orange.
Yeah.
Are you in custody at this time?
Not in Cherokee County.
Okay. Do you have pending charges somewhere else?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And does it have anything to do with this case?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And the only reason I'm asking you that is, have we made any kind of deals with you or discussed your charges with you in any way?
Actually, you made it very clear that you're uninterested in the charges that I have because it has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm not going to ask you anything else about that.
Okay.
So I want to know how you know Benjamin Ben Michael.
I call him Z.
Okay.
And I call Chloe a Lexus driver Kawani. Those are
Alright.
the names of which they were introduced to me as.
Okay.
So just to relieve confusion, for the court and for the jury. These are the names that I still call these people by.
Okay.
So I just want to make that very clear so there's no confusion. And maybe I just want to make that very clear. So I met Z in April of 2020 through an associate. And we met because of an interest in trust law and using trusts to legally incorporate yourself to minimize risk of obstruction by the government, like in the forms of taxes and being able to hold your properties and assets in a trust and making them safer. And there's a whole lot to that. So, I mean, how much would you like for me to talk about that? That's just the nature of how I met him.
Okay, and that's great. And I'll just keep asking small questions till we get to all the information that we need.
Sure.
You said that you had the interest in the trust law, but how did you actually come to know him? How did you forge that connection? Did you meet him somewhere in particular?
What do you mean? Like
How did you come to know he exists?
Through Peggy Schindler,
Okay, so
Yeah.
you met him through a mutual contact?
a mutual friend.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
I saw Peggy in Whole Foods,
Okay.
and she was telling me about the trust.
Okay.
But she perhaps doesn't have the vernacular or the capacity to explain it.
Mhm.
And so Z does, so I spoke with Z, and and then Peggy gave me the trust, and I began a relationship with Z from there.
Okay, and you said that was April of 2020?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and so going forward for the rest of this questioning, I'm going to refer to Benjamin
Yeah,
as Z.
that'd be great.
Okay,
Yeah, to
that will
avoid
help you.
confusion for everyone.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
Chloe will refer to as Kuwani?
Kuwani,
And
yes.
That's how you,
Spell that, please.
Kuwani, Ku''A''N'.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
and is that how you were introduced to them?
Yes.
Okay, and is that how you knew them through the entirety of your relationship and still with
Yes.
them? Okay. So in April of 2020, when you met Z,
Yes.
Was that an in-person meeting when you first encountered
Yeah,
him?
it was.
Okay, and where physically were you?
In a park. We met in a park in South Asheville.
Okay, in North Carolina?
In North Carolina, yes.
Was he living there or staying there at that time?
Yeah, he was staying with Peggy.
Okay, and when you met him, did you become aware of his relationship status?
Yeah.
Okay, and what did you learn about his relationship status?
That he has 4 wives, actually,
Okay.
and that he practices polygamy.
Okay.
Is that the question? Is that the answer you were looking for?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get at.
Sure.
At that time, were you in a relationship?
Yes, I was.
And did you exercise any type of polygamy?
No.
Okay. And so when you initially met him, did you come to know his wives?
Not initially, but we did later. I believe I met Kwani briefly in May, but we really spent some time together in late May
Okay.
when I went down to Florida to visit them with the girl that I was with at the time.
Okay. So you had a girlfriend at the time?
So we can call her my girlfriend, but
Okay.
she was living with me, and I mean, I guess you could say that I have always believed in plurality as well. That that men should have multiple women, but I was never in a committed. I mean, I was with Jen; she lived with me,
Okay.
and I took care of her. I provided her. She didn't work, so I provided her with food and shelter and safety and companionship and love. But it was never in our agreement that I wasn't allowed to see other women.
Okay.
So.
And as it relates to Z and his relationship, who were his wives that you came to know?
So their given names on their birth certificates would be Chloe, Alexis Driver, Jessica Lee Kafijian, and Sarah Stiles.
Okay.
But those women will be referred to as Kuwani and Anna, Gamliana, and Shalig, respectively, because those are their chosen Hebrew names.
Okay. Tell me about Jessica. You said, what did she go by as her chosen Hebrew
Gamliana.
name? Gamliana?
Yes.
How do you spell that?
Gamiliana, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
Gamliana, yes.
And you all called her Gami?
Gami or Anna, she prefers now.
Okay.
Because she says that people have a hard time pronouncing Gami and they question her, so she goes by Anna now.
Gami or Anna? Okay.
Yes.
And is that a decision that she made to change that from Gami to Anna?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Like I said, she says that when she introduces herself as Gami, people say, what? And so she just goes by Anna now.
Okay. And then Sarah is the legal name. What?
Shaylig.
Shaylee?
Shaylig.
How do you spell it?
Sheilig. It's a Hebrew word.
Shaylig?
Shaylig. It's
Okay.
a Hebrew word, yes.
All right. So when did you meet Kawani, Gami, and Shaylee?
Like I say, I think I actually met Kawani and Gami in May before they left, like briefly at Peggy's house.
Before they left North Carolina?
They left North Carolina to go to Florida, but
Okay.
I can't remember. It seems like I did. So you're asking me, this is like 5 years ago almost. So, whether I met them before I went to Florida, I can't remember. It feels like I did, but that's kind of irrelevant because we went to Florida, Jennifer and I, this girl that I was with at the time,
Okay.
we went to Florida to visit them and stay with them.
All right. Do you know when that was that you went to Florida to visit and stay with Z? And
It was after Kwani's birthday, which is the 18th.
Okay. Tell me when Kawani's birthday is. 18th of what?
May.
Okay.
Um,
So after May 18th of 2020, you and Michelle,
Jennifer.
sorry, Jennifer,
Yes.
you and Jennifer went to Florida.
Yes, we did.
And did you stay with Z and Gami?
No, we stayed in our van.
You stayed in your van. Okay.
Yeah, but we spent all of our time with them though. Like they were staying in a motel at the time
Okay.
in Nokomis Beach.
Where?
Nokomis Beach,
Where's
Florida.
that?
It's by Venice. It's like south of Sarasota.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that when you first met them, they were in North Carolina, and then they went to Florida, that they were staying in hotels. For the duration of your relationship with them, was that routine for them to kind of move around or travel or stay in different places?
Yeah, they were moving around a lot of the time.
Okay.
From what I understood, but they had been in, I can't recall what they were doing before that, but they stayed in Florida and then they went to Connecticut and they would stay in different places for like months at a time. I know that they stayed in Florida for months. After we left Florida, they stayed there for at least another month, I think.
Okay.
And they would stay in one place, like a singular location for a few months, and then they would go to the next location wherever they decided to go. I know that Kwani and Z had been in Myrtle Beach together for a pretty extended amount of time, in Virginia Beach. That's where they met Gamliana. So they stayed in these places for extended periods of time.
Okay. So you're aware of Florida, North Carolina, Connecticut, Virginia,
Yes.
anywhere else?
Gosh, I don't know.
Did they ever spend time in Tennessee?
I don't think any extended time. I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
So-
And so you indicated sometime in May of 2020 you went down to Florida and spent a lot of time with them?
Yes.
Okay.
We spent a week down there.
A week?
Yeah, about
Was
a
that
week.
the first time you saw Benjamin with all three of the women?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
And when you first met him and learned that he had 3 wives, sort of what was your thought process on that arrangement or situation?
I thought that was really interesting because usually you only see that with like religious cults like Mormonism, even though scripturally even old Jewish and Christian tradition promotes plurality. Like it's promoted in scripture that men have multiple wives. Like it's written about all through the Bible, but you don't really see it that much anymore. Perhaps in Mormonism only. And I had spoken with Z extensively about what was happening with his his wives in his situation, and I found it pretty interesting because he was providing care, all of the things that a man is supposed to provide for a woman. Like I said, and it was kind of like something that I was interested in because, like I said with Jen, I provided Jen with food, a place to shelter. She didn't work. I provided her with companionship and love, and I listened to her and I was affectionate towards her, even though I was never in a committed relationship. But it's like the value of having a wife is profound, like the value of having that intimacy that perhaps couldn't be achieved through a non-marital relationship. And so Z had basically taken what I found to be what I wanted in life was plurality, but also incorporating the deep intimacy of marriage with multiple women. And I thought that was highly interesting, and I was very curious to see how that played out and how that worked. And so was Jennifer. Honestly, she's like, whoa, like multiple wives, really? Wow, that's different. Like we should totally go hang out with him. So we did. So we
Okay.
went to Florida. Sorry, I'm gonna adjust myself.
You're fine.
My knees.
And you said you were kind of interested to see how it played out from
Or
May.
basically, we're talking about the social dynamic
Sure.
of a circumstance like that, which I think is really where most people go with that. When they hear about polygamy, most individuals will question the social dynamic of such relationship, and how does that work? What is the social dynamic between the women and the social dynamic between the women and the women and the men? I mean, you can see these types of shows. There's shows on television now that promote polygamy and
Like Sister Wives?
like Sister Wives. Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of like to see a firsthand perspective of that, of somebody who's really living like that. I thought was highly interesting. I was very interested in what these
Okay.
women had to say and what they were about.
Okay.
So was Jennifer.
Tell me, you said you're interested to hear what the women had to say and what they
Yeah,
were
well, yeah, I was just curious how they interacted with each other.
Okay.
So.
From May of 2020, when you said that you and Jennifer went to Florida and started spending time with them, how
That's
much
right.
time did you spend with Z and the 3 women from May until December of 2020?
Oh, well, there's a lot. I mean, so I went to go see them in May, and then I broke up with Jennifer. I broke it off with Jennifer over the summer. So she actually never saw them again.
Okay.
And then I stayed in Connecticut at Z's parents' house at the Joyce home in Connecticut in September for, I think I was there for about a little over 2 weeks.
Tell me about his parents. What do you know about them?
Oh, I love the Joyces. They're good. Mike Joyce is great. Is a good man. You know, they're essentially Michelle Joyce is they're very powerful people. Like even they're like really intelligent. They're highly intelligent people, highly well spoken about their traditions and values, and they're very warm and open and welcoming folks. Like,
Are they his biological parents still married?
Yes.
Do you know what they do for a living?
Michelle sells real estate, and Mike works at a factory.
Works at a factory?
Like a machine shop.
Okay. So you said you went to Connecticut and you stayed at his parents' house?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how much time did you spend at his parents' house?
Like I said, I was there for a little over 2 weeks, I think.
Okay. Was he there with the 3 women as well?
Kawani and Gamliana were staying there, and Shaylig was there sometimes, but her parents also live in Connecticut, so she was at her parents some too.
Okay, so Shaylig's parents are from Connecticut as well?
Yeah, they live it's like 45 minutes down the road in Southbury.
Okay, so Gami and Kawani and Z and you spent time at his
Yeah,
parents' house?
we sure did.
While Shaylig spent time with her family?
Yeah, I was sleeping in my van. Again, I had a van
Okay.
that I stayed in.
Okay.
And so I was sleeping in the driveway in the
Alright.
van.
And was it, from your observations, was it common for these women to go spend time with their families outside of their relationship with Z?
I mean, if they wanted to.
Okay.
I don't think, I didn't really get the feeling that Kawani or Gamliana were very, enthusiastic about going to spend time with their parents.
Okay.
And that they loved their husband and they stayed with him.
Okay, but Shaylig wanted to go see her family in Connecticut?
Yeah, I think it was just like a matter of convenience too, because they're all like staying at the house, and Shayla she went back and forth,
Okay.
So.
Did you ever meet the parents of Shaylig, Gami, or
I've met all these people.
Kawani?
I've met them all.
You met all of their parents?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Tell me the circumstances under which you went into their families' homes.
Let's see. I met Phil and Nancy Kafijian in October of 2020. I have actually stayed with Ben and Sharon Stiles at their home in Connecticut. I stayed there for the better part of a month.
At Shaylig's parents?
At Shaylig's parents, yes, I sure did. And I've met Eric and Renee Driver on several occasions. I met them for the first time in the summer of 2020. I met Kawani and Z and Eric and Renee Driver at a river in Tennessee, and we spent the day together.
Okay.
That was the first time I met
So
them.
Phil and Nancy Kafijian are
Jessica's parents.
Jessica or
Gamliana.
Gamliana's
Yeah, I knew
parents.
that. We're going to try to avoid this confusion.
Where do they live?
They live in Virginia Beach.
In Virginia Beach. Okay.
Yep.
And then you said that Shaylig's parents live in Connecticut.
Yes, they do in
And
Southbury.
do you know where Eric and Renee Driver, Kawani's parents, live?
In Knoxville, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I've never been to their house,
Okay.
so.
All right.
But I know that she's from Jacksonville originally, but
Okay.
I think they moved
Okay.
to Knoxville.
Okay. And do you know what the order of the women coming into this marriage was? Like
Yes.
who was first?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was Kawani first.
Okay. Do you
And
know how
then-
long she had been with Z? Like as of 2020 when you met him, how long they've been together?
Gosh, I don't know the answer to that question. Years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who came next?
Jessica Gamliana.
Okay. And how long had she been with him?
I think Kawani and Z had been together since she was right when she was 18, and then they met Gami a few months later.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know the answer to these questions
Okay.
exactly.
If you don't know, then
Yeah.
that's fine.
I'm
but
just
if you do know,
telling you what I think it is.
Okay.
It's kind of I haven't really considered that. I haven't, I'm sure I was told at some point, but golly,
and from your understanding, who was the last woman to kind of enter the picture?
Shaylig.
Shaylig.
Yes.
And when you met them, do you have any idea how long Shaylig had been in a relationship with Z?
I'm gonna guess 6 months or something like that.
Okay, so pretty recent.
Yeah, within the year. It had been within a year.
Okay. Do you still have a relationship with Z?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And do you know whether Shaylig and Gami are still with him?
Yes, they are.
They are.
They are
Okay.
very much still with him.
Okay. All right. So when we were talking about the sort of the social dynamic of polygamy and sort of your interest in that when you met Z,
Yes.
what did you observe about sort of his treatment of the women or their interaction and treatment toward him? Like, what was that from
I
your
observed a
perspective?
very beautiful, healthy relationship.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
All, like, they would wake up every morning and talk about feelings, you know, which I thought was really cute.
Talk
And
about feedings?
feelings.
Oh, feelings, okay.
Like, they would wake up every morning, they would be in the hotel, and Z would wake up with these girls, and, you know, they'd all wake up and sit around and talk about feelings.
Okay.
And how they felt that day and why they were feeling that way. And he would sit and be patient and kind and caring to them,
Okay.
and treat them the way a wife should be treated, with compassion and patience and love.
Okay.
And even Jennifer and I, we both observed this, yeah, I was actually a little surprised at the amount, like the absence of like petty argument and jealousy. You know, because you have to kind of expect that. That's what Jen said too. Like, we were like, wow, this is really, like, they really have a healthy thing here. That they're all interacting with each other. They all share the same type of value for humanness. You know, that like there's a real value here that you don't see in a lot of individuals. Like, most people act solely in self-interest, and that's not what you saw with these girls and their man. And it was really sweet, actually.
Okay.
Like, Z was always, he was being very kind to them, and they all got along. Like, I didn't see, you know, we stayed there for over a week in the van, and, you know, we didn't see any bickering, and we were with them all day, every day,
Okay.
like this whole time.
And that was
you know,
the week
so-
you spent with them in Florida in May of 2020?
That's right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
When you left Florida, I asked you sort of the broad question of how much time you spent with them between May of 2020 and December of 2020.
Sure.
But after that week in May, when did you later spend chunks of time with them and where?
Well, like I said, I met up with Z and Kawani and her parents at a river in
Mhm.
Tennessee.
Do you know when that was?
Gosh, sometime in the summer of 2020. I actually cannot remember exactly when that was.
Okay.
And then I stayed with Z. I stayed in his parents' driveway for a few weeks in September. Then I went back home, and then I came to Virginia Beach in the middle of October, and I stayed there for about 3 weeks with Z and Kawani, and Gamliana too. Sarah Shalig was in Connecticut at that time with her parents.
Okay, so in October, you spent 3 weeks in Virginia. Shaylee was with her parents.
That's right.
And Kuwani and Gami and you and Z were together in Virginia?
That's right.
Okay. I want to get signed back into this computer. I want to show you, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Let me show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 84. Do you recognize who this person is?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay. Does this accurately reflect the person you know?
That
you're
is
referring to,
that
Gami?
is Jessica Kafijian Gamliana, who prefers to be called Anna now, and I told
Okay.
her the name change has been a little difficult for me.
All right. Your Honor, this time I'm going to tender State's 84.
State's 84 is admitted.
Permission to publish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so this is Gami.
That is Jessica Kafijian Gamliana.
Okay. Do you know how old she is compared to Kawani?
Jessica's birthday is June 3rd, 1988.
June 3rd, 1988?
That's right.
Okay, so she's older. And this is State's Exhibit 85. Do you know who this is?
Yeah, that's Shaylee. That's Sarah Stiles.
Okay.
Yes.
Your Honor, I would tender State's 85.
It's admitted.
And this is, how old is she?
Shaylee was born February the 8th, 1997.
February 8th, 1997. How do you know all these women's birthdays? Is that something that's
I have a
important?
partially photogenic memory.
Okay. Would that be information that you seek out about people that you care about, or that
No,
you?
I don't even try to remember.
Okay, you just remember it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the nature of my mind.
Are these two pictures the scene that you remember of December the 8th of 2020, being at that residence?
Oh my gosh, that is the inside of Jerry's house, isn't it? Wow. Yeah, I don't know the inside. I was gonna say, because I see the picture of Shaylee there, and I'm like, wow, that's really messy. Like, because they never kept a messy place, you know. But Jerry does.
Okay.
So I see that there. That is the inside, because like you see all the dirt and like just like it's kind of nasty looking. I was just like, where was this picture taken? like, because they do not keep an unclean house like that.
Okay.
You know, so, but Jerry definitely does. Jerry's kind of a slob, self-admittedly on his part. So I'm not trying to,
Okay.
he'll admit that.
All
so.
right. Tell me a little bit about that. You said that they keep a clean environment. In terms of sort of the dynamics of the group when you were with them, did they have any viewpoints about like diet or like health in terms of?
Oh yes, very much. That's like a part of the way that they live, and it's part of the way that I live too.
Okay. And what were sort of were you all like-minded in that way?
Yes, very much. And that's one of the things that that I liked about Z immediately was that the way that he cared for himself and the way that he cared for his women.
What do you mean by that?
First of all, like there's like a standard of purity. You know, I've been on and off vegetarian for most of my life. I met them, and they're vegans.
Okay.
They eat no processed sugar. They eat extremely healthy, like no vegan. And the reason why they don't eat animal products is because of the inhumane treatment of animals. You know, so it's like it's viewed as like an innocent life. So you have an innocent life in this animal, and Z feels that we are not entitled to take that life. And I that was actually something that I picked up from Z, because before I had just been a vegetarian for my own health purposes. But then he told me about his reasoning for veganism, and I agree with him. It's like one of the things that I met Z when I went down to visit them in Florida. I hadn't been a vegetarian for a very long time, like 2 years. It had been 2 years that I'd been on a meat eating diet, and I got back around them, and I was influenced in a positive way, I would say, by being around them and being around their health again. And so I immediately went back to vegetarianism, and I've been a vegetarian ever since.
Okay.
Back to my routine. And Jen did it with me too,
Okay.
for the remaining time that she was with me.
All right.
We immediately switched back to vegetarianism.
Was everybody, during the time you spent with him between May of 2020 and beyond, was everybody a strict vegan?
Yes.
Okay.
And they also used like no drugs or alcohol whatsoever,
Okay.
which
And
is
what was the reason for that?
because it's like toxic.
Okay.
And because it's like it dilutes your mind and your ability to process and be your most pure and able self.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there any viewpoints surrounding like water or what kind of water they could consume?
What do you mean?
Just do they have any rules about what water they drank?
I don't know that I can speak to that specifically. I mean, I know that, but I will say that reverse osmosis water, I know that Z drinks reverse osmosis water, and so do I.
Okay.
I've been filtering my water reverse osmosis for the past 20 years.
Okay.
Because, you'd like to get there's a lot of particulates in the water, especially, you get the water out of the sink, out of the tap here, it's full of chemicals and fluoride and chlorine and things that are heavy metals that are unhealthy for your brain and body.
Okay.
That should really be avoided at all costs by everyone. But like I said, very few individuals take the time to care for themselves at this like level of impeccability. And so that's something that I respected about them very much and attracted me to become closer and better friends with them.
Okay. From your perspective, was the observation of these practices something that was inherent in them or something that required discipline from them?
No, definitely not. Like Kawani was the one who was like giving me a hard time about eating meat when I was in. She's the one who's like, she's like, you just don't care about the animals, do you? And I'm like, she's like, maybe you're just an asshole. And I was like, maybe.
She
I
said
am.
maybe you were just an asshole?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're talking about
Kawani, the woman who's sitting right there.
Okay.
And I said, maybe I am, and maybe I should stop eating meat because of this reason, not for my own health purposes.
Okay.
Because of the taking of life and because, it's better to live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, maybe you're right, young lady, like I see where you're coming from. And so I actually went back to vegetarianism then.
Was she expressive in communicating about sort of her belief system of subscribing to these practices?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like it was like forced.
Okay.
It's like it's pretty logical, really.
Okay.
It makes sense. It's like this is impeccability. This is taking care of yourself in the highest regard. This is eliminating toxic waste from your body. This is living a life that's clean and pure without drugs and alcohol of any type, including caffeine.
Okay.
No nicotine, no alcohol of any type. They don't drink at all.
Okay.
So it's like it's really rare to find that level of commitment of care to yourself. And all of these girls were just on board with it. They were like, of course they are, because it makes sense and you feel better and you feel healthier and you're like, representing something that is separate from the regular world of toxicity and negligence to one's own well-being.
Okay. You mentioned that during your I've used kind of December of 2020 as like a date just because of the incident that we're here for, but
Yeah, we'll get there.
how long did you spend time with the group even beyond that date?
Oh gosh, I'm still friends with Z now. I was in
Okay.
Shayla's parents' house for a month in March of earlier this year. Like,
Okay,
you
so
know,
for the last 4 years,
I've
you've
been-
maintained constant communication and contact
most
and friendship
definitely,
with them? Okay.
most definitely, and we've all been very hurt by this, and we've
Okay.
worked through this together and as the best we can.
All right.
You know,
So you mentioned that they didn't consume any drugs or alcohol. Are you referring to sort of illicit drugs or just all drugs? What do you mean by the term drugs?
anything that is psychotropic in nature.
Okay.
Anything that's like no pharmaceuticals, no alcohol, no drugs of any kind.
Okay.
What do you mean? What drugs are there? What,
I guess what I'm going to get into is sort of like modern medicine or treatment of ailments or like healing practices. Like, did they have sort of didn't adopt the traditional worldview of like the exercise of medicine?
Yeah, none of these girls really had very many ailments.
Okay.
So, I know, but you mean like ibuprofen?
Sure.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah. I prescribe to these systems myself. Like, I don't
Okay.
take those kinds of drugs either.
All right. And was the whole group sort of like-minded in that way?
They're all for it, yeah,
Okay.
100%.
So were there sort of healing practices or things that you all did for your bodies that were not traditional?
I mean, like what?
Like drinking your own urine?
Sure.
Okay.
I've been drinking my urine daily for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, like, obviously that's not traditional in a broad
Well, it was in
sense.
the past when people understood their bodies.
Okay.
Now we've become so deranged and deluded and essentially live in a psychotic society of mental illness and addiction to pharmaceuticals and alcohol and toxic food that we have become so deluded and separate from what it means to be healthy on the deepest and most fundamental cellular levels that we would describe an attempt to achieve homeostasis in the body. Yeah, so urine therapy is non-traditional in today's modern terms of, our deranged society, toxic society. But it's actually written about by medical doctors. It's written about by people all over the world. There's if you go online and look up urine therapy, there's like 15 books available written by allopathic medicine doctors, homeopathic medicine doctors, written by shamans and gurus from the East, written about by regular everyday people who have healed themselves, who claim to have healed themselves of things such as cancer by drinking their urine.
Okay.
And it tells all about, if you want to do your research, urine is from the word orin, meaning light. And basically it's like when you go to an oncologist and they take a urine sample instead of a blood sample, that's because the urine is more telling of the malfunctions in your body. And so allopathic, homeopathic, and people from all types of different natures write about, the photonic realignment of your DNA through urine therapy. So urine has like discarded nutrients in it, but those nutrients have passed through your kidney and bladder and are now contained within orin, the light production of your body. And it needs to be understood, and this is just like very common programming in the world, that urine is waste, and it's literally an antiseptic. It's the opposite of waste. Your stool is your waste. Your urine is an antiseptic. It's a true sterilant, and it's antibacterial. That's why Boy Scouts 101, when you have an injury or you have a snake bite or a jellyfish sting or something like that, and you use your urine to sterilize and to act as an antiseptic and act as antibacterial immediately on open wounds in the flesh. So you could think about this as like the same type of thing is happening inside of your body. We're talking about like antibacterial,
How long have you been engaging in that practice as like a, do you consider it a healing practice or like a health routine?
Well, to me, it was a healing practice at first, and I would say that the first year, it took me probably like 6 months to a year, but actually I would say maybe a little less than that. I think for some individuals, they would probably, that would be a healing practice for at least a year, but I was considerably healthier and more fit than the average individual.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been filtering my water, all the fluoride and chlorine out of my water for like 20 years since I was in high school.
Okay.
I started these practices very young. I just realized that, it's like, would you like to have toxic waste and heavy metals in your water, or should we filter these out? It doesn't really take a genius to figure this out. Like, we should be taking these steps to heal ourselves and not only heal ourselves, but as a health practice. So I'd say like for the average individual, I think their first year of urine therapy would be more of like a healing, but I use it to maintain my body still to this day.
And did you start urine therapy practice before you met Z?
No, actually, but I didn't learn about it from Z. I learned about it from Peggy.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I started drinking my urine, and after about a month, I was Z never even mentioned that.
Okay.
But after I'd been drinking my urine for about a month or something, I was like mentioning it to Z, and he's like, oh yeah, yeah, we do that too.
Okay.
You know, so I actually know a couple dozen individuals who drink their urine regularly.
A couple dozen? Okay.
Yeah, sure do.
And as far as Z and Kuwani and Shalig and Gami, did they all participate in urine therapy also?
As far as I know.
Okay. Did you ever know of anybody forced to participate in that practice?
No, I didn't, actually. All the individuals that I've met, or it's kind of like one of those things that's like, oh, I didn't even know about that. You know, like I didn't know until Peggy told me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started doing my research online, and it turns out there's a lot more people that do it than, like, there's this guy who I really respect online. His name's Troy Casey. He's a certified health nut. He's like an influencer on Instagram. And so he and like several other individuals, they really promote like urine therapy. They do it all the time.
Okay.
You know, so it's like, it's a little more mainstream than, you know, you would think. And unless you know about it, and then you hear about it, and it's like, oh, this is a lot more mainstream than I thought.
Mm-hmm. You already kind of just spoke about the sort of group's collective views on medicine or traditional medicine.
Sure.
Were there any other types of healing practices to either like center themselves or strengthen their mind or their body that you were aware of?
Gosh, I mean, I personally use all kinds of, like, I use Rife machines. I've watched people have miraculous healings from Rife machines.
And what is that?
A Rife machine is a frequency generator developed by Royal Raymond Rife in the early 1930s at the University of San Diego, Southern California. And this man found that, and you can do your research on this, anybody who's interested, this man found that when exposed to certain, that everything has a frequency and vibration, because that's the nature of reality. It's just an atomic structure. And so to understand the fundamentals of science, which we're all taught in school, but just doesn't seem to sink in to a lot of people, you know, that everything that we're experiencing right now, the air is mostly nitrogen and the matter's it's mostly carbon. So we have a atomic pixelated holograph reality, and these things have been written about from, you know, the 1927 Solvay Convention in Physics and beyond, even to Michael Talbot and Carl Sagan, who write about the nature of reality. And so everything has a frequency and vibration, including illnesses inside of the body. And so this man, Royal Raymond Rife, was able to find that these illnesses, specifically tumors and things like MS and certain other illnesses, have a certain vibrational frequency, and when exposed to certain frequencies, now we're talking about particles and waves, which is, you know, another foundational cornerstone of the understanding of science, quantum physics, and reality. When you have the particulate matter of a tumor inside of your body, it may be exposed to the wavelengths of certain frequency vibrations, and it destroys tumors. I've watched some pretty miraculous healings. People being on their deathbed to walking around cancer-free.
Were those things that?
No, that's just me.
Okay.
You know, I'm just introducing this to, you know, to the world.
Okay.
Here, right now.
Let me ask you about, and I mean, I've got to just keep
But
it.
Z knows about frequency. Z knows about Rife machines too.
Okay.
You know, so I'm just curious, like, which ones?
Let me ask a more direct question.
Yeah, please.
Are you aware of them using any type of sensory deprivation or dark therapy?
Dark therapy, yeah, from the teachings of Montauk Chia.
Okay, can you
Absolutely.
tell me about that?
Okay, so I did dark therapy in September of 2020. I actually did it after I left Connecticut. I had like a small bungalow style house, and so I taped off the bedroom and the bathroom, and I blacked out all the windows, and I retreated into a meditative place for 432 hours.
Okay. And was meditation or sensory deprivation or dark therapy, was that something that Z and the three women also subscribed to and participated
Z
in?
did dark therapy like 10 years ago.
Okay.
You know, he did dark therapy, but at the time when I met them, none of the women had done dark therapy.
Okay.
Gamliana was the first one to do it, and she did it for 2 weeks at my house in November of 2020.
Okay.
She was the only one to have done that at that point.
What brought about her doing that? Did she want to do that, or was she
Absolutely.
made to do that?
No, definitely not.
Okay,
Like,
so
Z never made them do anything like that. Like,
Okay.
I mean, it's like they volunteered because they're interested in the same type of achievement. I know Shayla did the dark therapy for a very long time.
Okay.
She went into the dark for like 2 months.
okay.
Yeah, and will speak highly of it, you know, but she was seeking that. She was seeking, I mean, Z didn't say, go be in the dark, you know, it's like, that's not the thing.
And
you know?
in practice of dark therapy or sensory deprivation, do you come out of it whenever you feel ready, or is it something that like you're locked in even if you don't want to do it?
No, what you're asking is like a personal question about the individual who's embarking on their quest for enlightenment. You know, so you're asking me to, you know, speak to the nature of another individual's personal. I set a time. I was like, I'm going in for 432 hours, and when that time was up, I came out.
Okay. And
You know.
from your observations of the rest of the group, was that personal to them? Did they make choices about whether they wanted to do it and how long they wanted to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
But it's also, you know, the kind of, it's like, you know, I was raised in my household, and I know that this culture and society in the modern world has deviated a long way from traditional practice, but my father is the head of my house growing up, not my mother.
Okay.
You know, like we lived in a house where my dad set a standard, and that's what we lived by, you know, and my mom was a wife, you know, that, you know, lived that, you know, her dad, like it's a patriarchal household,
So
you know,
you-
and my mom was never oppressed, just like these girls were never oppressed.
So you
know?
subscribed in that way to more traditional gender roles?
Yeah, more
Okay.
traditional gender roles where the man is the head of the household.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
And Z is the head of his house.
Is that biblically based or what?
No, it's psychologically sound.
Okay.
It's like, you know, men are better leaders. They're better decision makers. They can regulate their emotions in a way that women cannot. And they're just, you know, they're better leaders.
Did you ever
So-
see that manifest itself in the mistreatment of
Absolutely not.
Shalig, Gami?
I've already
or
told you
Kalani?
how sweet and kind he was to these women. But also at the same time, he sets a standard. If they wanted to go do drugs and alcohol, then leave. That was the thing. It's like they all lived this life with him by choice. This was not, you have to live. It's like, if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to live your life, and this is the way that I live my life now, and every woman that I've had in my life, in my entire life, has been this way. And the way that I live my life right now, when I'm free again, which it shouldn't be too long, I will be, and any women that come into my life now will live the way that I live. We will be clean vegans. We will not use drugs and alcohol in any way. You will be treated with care and respect and love and kindness and listened to. I will appreciate and respect your feelings, just as Z was doing with his wives, just
Okay.
as I've always done with the women in my life. You know,
And
but when
if-
it comes to crucial decision making and setting the standard for the household, I am the head of the household.
Okay.
It's pretty simple.
And you said, you know, if any of these women wanted to use drugs or alcohol, they could leave.
They can leave at any time.
Did you
Like,
ever have any perception that they were not free to leave?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. I want to talk to you about. Now, you said that you spent about 3 weeks in Virginia in October of 2020, and that was with Gami's parents.
October of 2020. No, we stayed in an Airbnb in
Oh, an
Virginia
Airbnb
Beach.
in
Yeah,
Virginia.
That's
Okay.
right.
What was the reason for that location?
Oh, it's where Gami's from.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a beautiful area.
Okay.
So,
And then after October of 2020, when you spent 3 weeks with them there, what time did you spend with them after October?
gosh, we were together pretty much all the time from
Okay.
that point on.
How did you all spend your days? Did you all work, or like what was the dynamic?
I worked some. Yeah, at that time, I have a background in personal fitness training,
Okay.
yoga instruction, private yoga instruction, and like I'm not a certified nutritionist, but I offer my opinion on nutrition and health, and I work privately in these areas, and like I say, all of my financial partakings and everything is private through my trust.
Okay.
So.
And what about Z and the 3 women? How would you all spend your day to day? Like, what would you do during the day?
Gosh, most of this time from October 4th was caring for Kawani, honestly, and trying to help her find her way back to a place of sanity. I mean, we use these terms insane. I know that these have psychological terms, and I know that these have legal terms, and so I don't mean to like, in my own ignorance to what is happening here, I mean, I may need you to educate me on which words are acceptable to use and which words are not. And but I would say at this point in time, most of the time that we spent together was trying to help to assist and do correct by Kawani to try to help her with the mental health, the severe mental health issues that she was suffering from.
Okay. So tell me in terms of timeline, you said that in October of 2020, that you spent 3 weeks in Virginia.
Yes.
And then where did y'all go after you left Virginia?
Back to Asheville, North Carolina.
And why Asheville?
That's where I lived. That's where Peggy lives. And it's another beautiful area.
Okay. And where did you all stay in Asheville?
I let them stay at my house.
Okay, so-
in Candler,
All right.
41 Oakdale.
Okay.
And I let them stay there. And I stayed either in my van in the driveway, or at my parents'.
Okay.
Back and forth. I also stayed with my sister a little bit, but I didn't mind to open up my home to them at all. I let them stay there.
We've talked a lot about the three women
Yeah.
and Z. During the entire time you knew them, was Hannah a part of that?
Yeah, she was there. She was there all the time. She was always around. There was never any point in time where Nimsi, as I will refer to her, there was never a point in time where Nimsi wasn't around.
Was Nimsi her Hebrew name that was
Yes.
given? Okay. May I approach the witness? Do you recognize what's depicted in States 86?
Yeah, that's her.
Okay. Is this the child that you spent time around?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna publish States 86. And you said that she was always around.
Yeah, she was.
How did they manage the care of Nimsi? Was everybody involved in that, or was it?
I would say it was more predominantly Kiwani,
Okay.
but the other girls definitely were there to support, and Z definitely was there to support.
Okay, we have tissues there if you need them.
Yeah.
So, all these periods of time where you talked about weeks at a time spending with him and the
Yeah.
women, was Nimsi a part of that too?
100%.
Okay.
That's my little friend right there. We grew a pretty significant bond together.
Okay. What do you mean by that? What was your relationship with her like?
I mean, she was like I say, she was my friend. You know, she would always wave and smile at me, and she would come to me and like allow me to hold her. You know, and she wasn't always like that with everyone.
Okay.
We were definitely, I was definitely pretty close with that baby, and all of the individuals in the group recognized that, particularly the baby would go to me. But a lot of babies are like that. I'm like that with a lot of babies.
Okay.
Like, you know, I come from a large family. My dad has 5 siblings and my mother has 4. They all have children. All my aunts and uncles have children, except my dad's oldest brother. And so, you know, I'm the oldest on my mom's side. I have like 11 cousins, you know, and some of those cousins have kids now, you know, and I've held dozens of babies and been around, you know, family, and I've spent a lot of time. I've held a lot of babies, you know, and interacted with a lot of babies. And she was a really bright light and a special child, and we got along. Yeah, she was. I cared deeply, as I still do, obviously.
All right. Let me go back. You mentioned a minute ago that, you know, in terms of the terminology of mentally ill or insane, and you said, you know, you're going to have to shoot me straight on that. What I want to talk to you about is just observations. I don't,
Yeah, okay.
I don't
Well,
need
that
you
we
to
can
put-
do. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
don't
need
need
you
you
to-
to put labels on anything.
Awesome. Well,
or,
if you find me some, you know, I'm just speaking freely now, you know, so there may be points and times where, you know, words come, where I use words to describe the state, Kiwani state, mentally
Sure.
impaired, insane. Like, I mean, erratic, manic behavior, you know, I'm using these words because I don't know what other words to use.
Okay.
And so if you would like to direct me in another way, I will use the words that you would like for me to use. So,
Let me ask you a pointed question. In terms of, do you think collectively as the group that you all maybe had some untraditional worldviews? Or not subscribed to by the masses, I'll say.
not subscribed to by the masses? Yes, I'll take that compliment.
Okay. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just trying to
No,
get to the root of it.
I'll take that
And
compliment, like I said.
The purpose of my question is I want to establish with you, and I will do it through questioning, the difference between an independent delusion that Kiwani might have been having versus belief systems that you all adopted that maybe are a departure from the masses.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I find that to be rather irrelevant to the whole thing because, you know, we're talking about a woman, and so here's the thing. I'm gonna lay it down for you like this. When we went to Florida, me and Jennifer, we had like a real curiosity about this, and we're like, you know, what kind of strangeness is this? Like, you know, I met Z. I think, like I said, I feel like I had met the wives like briefly at Peggy's house, but only for a minute, and I can't remember if that's how it was or not, or if I didn't actually meet them until Florida. But I feel like
I don't mean to be disrespectful or interrupt
Yes, ma'am.
you, but we have to have whatever your responses are be in response to my question.
Okay, very good.
So let me just ask a narrow question.
Very good.
In terms of the belief systems or the things that you may have discussed amongst the group, was there any type of belief that the world is fake or things are not real around?
Not real?
Mm-hmm.
Well, define real.
Okay. Do you recall having discussions or the group subscribing to some type of a belief that?
No, I asked you a question.
Okay.
I asked you to, or I made it as a statement. Define real.
Okay. Was there any belief system amongst your group that like there is an alternate reality, or that what we're perceiving or living is not
So,
actually what we're perceiving or living?
so I'm going to answer that with facts.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to go back to what I was talking about before, that it is fact that atoms, atoms, exist, and that atoms are in it mostly just empty space. Okay, and so they are colliding particles that form a visual and materialistic reality that we experience right now. Now, if we are to define what is real, I mean, then you are to define what is real by your senses, because these fundamental understandings of factual reality are understood by, intellectuals all over the world. Now, whether the common ignorant masses can put them into practical application for their own life and their own ability to strive to understand and comprehend themselves and see reality as it is, I mean, I live amongst the inept, but to describe something that is mostly empty space as real is scientifically, logically, and factually repugnant.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
real would mean that we have our senses and we are connected to these bodies. And like many tens, hundreds of millions of individuals around the world, I hypothesize, and I would call it to be my belief that that we all have souls, that there is a soul, that there is an energetic manifestation that is participating in this reality in a body. So there's something greater. There is something greater. To answer your question directly, there is something greater happening here than what the inept can perceive or choose to perceive.
Okay. And did Z and Kuwani and Gami and Shalig, did they all sort of share that view? Are those things that you all discussed?
Well, this intellectualism was shared by myself and Z for sure. Like,
Okay.
we talked about this immediately.
Okay.
But like I say, I mean, I know several individuals who are able to keep up with these types of conversations and comprehensions of fact.
Did you all
So-
believe that you had some type of broader consciousness, or I don't know if I'm using the right
I think that
analogy.
everyone has the potential to have a broader consciousness.
Okay.
That did I know it to be factual that I am pursuing that, and that the average individual is not? 100%.
Okay. And was that sort of the tone of the group in terms of your,
Absolutely.
I guess, broader calling in the world?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to put words into the mouths of these other individuals. Now, we have some agreements.
Mm-hmm.
We have some agreements into the matter of what is factual, scientific understanding.
And to your point on that, what were the agreements? In what way were you like-minded with Kuwani, Shalig, Z?
I mean, we're not talking about them. We're talking about Z.
Okay.
I don't think
I want to talk about the collective group. And
I think that these are women. They want to run and laugh and be silly on the beach.
Okay.
Me and Z are sitting here discussing,
Okay.
yes, doctorate level, perceptions in quantum physics. Yeah.
All
But
right.
these women don't have these conversations.
Okay.
They play with the baby and they do what women do, and they be,
Okay.
silly and
Okay. So you-
smile and laugh and do things like that. Like, what are you talking about?
So
Like,
you observed them more to be sort of carefree and fun and playing and
yeah,
laughing?
we're not having these conversations. I'm not
Okay.
having these conversations with these women.
Okay.
I don't even know if they're capable of that.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, which is not an insult. It's just a matter of fact.
Okay.
And so that's okay. That's not their role anyway.
Okay.
Their role is to be together and, have fulfillment in their life from their version of reality that they're experiencing, which is, for the most part, what I saw. I mean, until Kuwani started to really have her break, and become what I would call mentally ill,
Okay.
and her suffering and mental illness had completely consumed her.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was really just mostly just a lot of hanging out and playing with the baby and laughing and being girls.
Okay. All right.
Like-
So tell me, when and we've talked about the word insane, the word mentally ill, in terms of things that you saw from Kuwani.
Sure.
And the reason I started by asking you about worldview is because I was trying to distinguish between things that maybe she was being delusional or having an individual break from reality versus things that the group believed collectively.
Yeah, I mean, I get
So-
where you're coming from, and like I say again, I feel like that's irrelevant, because we're talking about a woman who had complete breaks in her cerebral capacity
Okay.
to understand, to where she didn't remember what just happened.
Okay.
She did, and I don't think that has anything to do whether she's a Mormon or a Christian or a Scientologist.
And that's
or-
not my point, but
Yeah.
to your point earlier, the law does have definitions, and
Okay.
it does relate specifically to certain symptoms or things that she exhibited. So
Sure.
what I want to know is, from your observations, was there anything that she exhibited that you saw to be a delusion?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, it's like, so what you're asking me is whether the verbiage and the information that was coming out of a psychologically unwell individual was or was not delusion by my judgment or my standards.
Okay.
That's what you just asked. So I'm not sure that, there is. Okay, so I want to make an example for you in direct response to your question. There are individuals who, and this is documented, there have been massive case studies on individuals with things like autism, or things like there are other psychological unwellnesses that we could classify them as mental handicaps, as they would be labeled by society, who have these incredible abilities to give us information that is perhaps unperceivable by a mind. So what we're talking about is frequency and bandwidth. So with some of the things that I saw and heard Kawani say to be delusion, yes, but did I also in her like deranged mental state see, like, it's like, so what is delusion? Like, what, like these questions, it's like, yeah, she was outside of her mind blabbering about complete nonsense sometimes.
Okay, so tell me,
when she would come back,
let's be specific. What was the complete nonsense she was blabbering about?
gosh, I can't even remember specific things. But there's also like, okay, so so we have to really dissect the mind here to understand, because there was an event that happened on November 25th, which involved a woman who pulled off on the side of the road. Kawani was having an episode, I guess you could say. And this woman pulled off on the side of the road.
All right, let me stop you for a second. What do you mean by episode? What did you observe? What did she say?
Okay, so we'll begin there to come back around to what I was saying.
Okay.
Because it was only after that day that I heard Kawani mention at all the safety of the child.
Okay.
And that was on November 25th. And
Of
it was
2020?
it was because of this woman who had this psychotic, drunk woman who was on drugs and who was threatening us with gun violence.
Let me back up. On November 25th of 2020, where were you guys at?
We were at Peggy's house.
In what state?
North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina.
Who's Peggy?
Peggy is, who is Peggy? Peggy Schindler is someone that I've known for like 20 years. Friend of mine.
Okay.
Yep, I used to work with Peggy's daughter at this sports bar called Hickory Tavern. And
We don't need to get into the weeds. I'm just trying to provide them some context of who Peggy is.
Peggy's a friend of mine for 20 years.
All right,
Yep.
so Peggy's got a house in North Carolina.
Yep,
You
she
all
does.
were spending time at Peggy's house.
That's right.
Who was there?
Me, Shaylik, Kawani, Peggy, Z, and Nancy.
Okay. And how long did y'all spend at Peggy's house around
That
time?
day?
Just that day?
No, we were around Peggy's house a lot.
Okay.
You know?
And you specifically referenced November 25th. Why do you know that date?
Because that was the day that this woman pulled off on the side of the road, and I feel like I think that was like a real turning point for Kawani, which had massive effects on her psyche, which led to the death of Nipsey.
Okay. So tell me, on November 25th, you were talking about this woman, which we'll get into that in a minute. Prior to this woman being involved, what were you observing of Kawani on the 25th?
On that day?
Yes.
Okay, so it was actually a pretty normal day. Like, she was being like relatively calm and clear, and like you could tell, like I could always tell it in her eyes when she'd be in a certain place, and then something would trigger her and she would just lose it. Her eyes would change, and she would come back and she would not remember what happened. And
What do you mean she would lose it? What would she do?
gosh, all kinds of things. So this day, she was in it, and she just started shaking and attacking Z and attacking the other girls, and she tried to attack me before, and never the baby though. That needs to be clear. Never the baby, because I would have nipped that shit in the bud. I would have not tolerated that, And and I don't think Z would have either. Like so we were at Peggy's, and she starts and then she just runs out the door, for no reason, no clear and definable reason whatsoever.
So I want to know, what did you see? You saw her shaking.
Or just being it's she's just being like she would get this look in her eye like she like was absent, you know.
So she had an absent look in her eye and she was shaking. Did she say anything?
She'll like scream and she's like, I have to go, I have to get out of here. And she like starts screaming and we're like, Z's like, honey, calm down, you know, like he's trying to, was like constantly working so diligently with her and being so patient and kind and working with her because, you know, she would come back from these episodes and she'd start crying. She's like, I don't know what's happening, you know, and she'd just like completely like lose her mind. I don't know how else to describe it. This day she just took off running and we're on Overlook Drive, which is a really dangerous road because there's been people killed on that road before, literally, and pets, all kinds, you know, it's like there have been major accidents. People fly on that road and it's known that people go really fast through there. And so Z was like, I was probably in a little better shape than Z, probably a little faster on my feet at the time. He asked me to go run her down and cut her off and try to get her to like come back, you know, not that like we're trying to like, you know, we're just trying to make sure she doesn't hurt herself, you know. And
what made you think she was going to hurt herself?
Because she's running in the middle of a road.
Okay.
Like, I mean, she's like running like a crazy person down the middle of the road for no specific reason that she made clear that she just had to go suddenly at that point. And she made no specific reason clear why she was doing that. She made no specific, like, she wasn't trying to go anywhere. She had no real purpose, you know. She's just like, you know, an endangerment to herself and to others. You know, like she's running down the road just like
in traffic?
In traffic,
okay.
Belligerently. And
okay.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, we probably should like try to get her back. And so I ran down and I cut her off and she ran back towards Peggy's house in the middle of the road now. And I'm like trying to avoid cars and like their cars are stopping and like she's just like running. And she finally like tired out and sat, and then she was sitting on the side of the road, collapsed crying. And Z asked me to pick her up and carry her back across the street to our house.
You said she was sitting?
She was sitting like on this, like almost like on the side of the road, pretty much. And the shoulder is like very narrow on that road, so we're in the road.
Okay.
You know, like towards the white line.
All right. And did she articulate anything at that time?
No, she wasn't articulating anything. She was just like crying and sobbing, like just like incomprehensible jargon of like blabbering about, you know, like non-tangible things. I don't even know. I wasn't even really listening to her at that point. I was just kind
of. When you say non-tangible, was I'm trying to get at, was she paranoid about something specific? Was she delusional about something specific?
Not that day. Not that day. No, she wasn't.
She was shaking.
She was just.
You said she had some kind of look in her eye.
Yeah, the look. You know, the look that she would get when she would be like absent of herself.
Okay.
And like, you know, it's like, and then you ask her about it later, and like she's like, I don't really even remember some of these things. You know, like she's like having a complete break in her like ability to perceive reality, basically.
Okay. And when you first saw her behave that way was when?
When I first saw her behave that way was in September. She was not like that in May.
September.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Kawani has, you know, she's admitted to me a lot about her past, which had led her to have like a really, some psychological unwellness anyway. Being like, this is her words to me. Like, we have talked about this as a group, that she was raped by her brothers when she was like 9 years old. That she had an older brother drug dealer who sold cocaine, and she was doing cocaine regularly by the time she was 9 or 10 years old, forced to have sex with her older brother's friends when she was like 10, 11 years old. She talks about how her parents abused her, how she went to her second grade teacher and told her teacher that her parents were locking her in the closet and abusing her.
These are discussions she had with you about her mental well-being?
Her past.
Okay.
Which I think...
Was that in relation to sort of her
totally.
mental and emotional health?
I think it was the foundation of her breakdown. The foundation of her breakdown and the mental unwellness began in her childhood, not like when she was like, you know, 20 years old. Like these seeds were already sown by the people that cared for her, and you know, I remember her saying things like, yeah, my brother's penises were really small, so it wasn't that bad being raped by them. You know, like things like that. She would give details about these circumstances, details about being locked in a closet by her parents, details about using cocaine regularly. Like, so I think that the psychological unwellness and the foundation of mental instability, like she was already, you know, these were demons that were planted in her a long time ago.
Let me ask you, did you ever see anyone in the group or yourself be physically violent toward her?
No. And now I did carry her across the street. That's the only time I ever touched Kawani. It was that one time carrying her across the street to get her out of the road so we don't get hit by a car.
Okay.
You know, that was the only time. Now I saw Kawani be violent towards everybody in the group. I saw her be aggressive, but not when it would be like a total snap like this. And so do you want to finish because I'd like to tell about another day, you know?
Sure. Well,
when-
let's. I asked you when the first time is that you kind of saw her exhibiting any behaviors, and you said September of 2020.
Yes.
And then you had referenced specifically November 25th as being, in your mind, some pivotal date
It
that
was a hugely pivotal date.
changed things.
From my observation of her.
Okay.
Yes, and
So-
the things that she was saying, like that woman, there was a woman who pulled off on the side of the road to kind of make whatever was happening there her business. She was drunk, belligerent, she assaulted me and Peggy and Z. This was like a very disturbed woman. And she...
Is this when you're carrying Chloe?
No, I was carrying her across the road, and a woman who lived in the apartment complex was pulling out at the time. And she was like, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, she's just having a panic attack. I'm gonna carry her back to the house to get her out of the road so no one gets hurt. And the woman who lived in the apartment complex where we were said, she said, I see, and if you need any help, if you need anything, just let me know. Okay? So that was the woman who lived there. Now, this woman who pulled in off the side of the road was just some stranger, you know, who she pulled off on the side of the road, and Kawani's like ran over to her car and was like, I need to call my mom, I need to call my mom. That's what she started saying then. Like, that's just like a random thing. She hadn't talked about calling her mom at all. Like, that's just something that came out of her, you know, just like some random thought or memory or whatever it was that was like just random that day. After she decided that she needed to run in the middle of the street, we got her back over to the house, and this random, complete stranger pulled inside this apartment complex to make this her business, like I say, rudely and belligerently. And Kawani started going to her and saying, I need to call my mom.
Okay.
And so...
Had she asked to call her mom up until that point?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, this was just like something that just started coming out of her. It's like, you know, she just like, all of a sudden, she's just like, I need to call my mom. I need to call my mom. You know, she's like saying this. And me and C and Shaylee and Peggy are all standing around. Shaylee's holding the baby. We're all like, let her call her mom.
Okay. And
Let
did
her
she?
call her mom. No, she didn't, because this woman started being belligerent and jumping out of the car, and Kawani started to come back into herself. You could see it in her eyes that she realized that this woman was a danger to her. And the woman started screaming about how we're all going to jail, and she's going to call the cops and get the baby taken from her, and all of these things. Like, I mean, these completely, just this belligerence, you know, like.
So this was a passerby that
Just a
intervened when
passerby.
she saw you with Chloe,
That's
with
right.
Kawani.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what happened after that?
Gosh, a whole scene happened after that. She was started being verbally abusive to everyone.
Who's she? Who are you referring to?
This woman named Sandra Torres.
That's the woman that stopped?
That's the woman that stopped.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's like threatening us. Like, she threatened. I have a gun in my car right now. You know, I'll shoot you and kill you and all this stuff. Her breath, was rank of alcohol. You know, so she's just this random drunk lady who apparently had a gun and was. There's like this whole scene that unfolded. I think that it's most. I think the most important thing to take away from that day, and why I mentioned it, is because after that day, after she was screaming at Kawani and Z that she's going to get the baby taken away, so she pulls over on the side of the road, and like her story is to be like this vigilante to help this woman who's being kidnapped and blah blah blah. She gets across the road. This woman who's sitting right there was screaming about how she wanted to call her mom. All of the other individuals said, let her call her mom. Simple. Let her call her mom. No one's objecting to this. The only reason why we just had this whole scene is because she's like endangering herself and other individuals. Let her call her mom. Sandra Torres makes this into like, we're all very calm, you know, at this point. Like, we're like, okay, we got her out of the road. That was like our goal. You know, we got her out of the road, and now we're just calm, waiting for Kawani to calm down. Whatever conversations, whatever care we need to show her to get her back into a calm place, we would do. And this woman is just like aggravating this situation, you know, with her own like, you know, drama. And she threatened to have the baby taken away, and that she was going to kill us. And it was only after that day that there was anything in Kawani's delusional speak. You know, like I said, we have to define what is, you know, in her delusional speak, in her blabbering, when she would go outside of herself, and her eyes would change, and she'd start to be erratic and sometimes violent. That was the first time ever after that day that she said anything in those states about the baby.
And after that incident, what was it that she said about the baby?
It started as, I need to protect the baby.
Okay.
Like, the baby's in danger. The baby's in danger. Something's going to happen to the baby. And she was also talking about that woman saying that she was going to kill us. Like that, it got inside of her head somehow from this woman about the baby's in danger and all of this stuff. You know, like it was a really dramatic shift.
So as it relates to that dramatic shift that you just described and her feelings about Hannah
Yes.
and the baby,
That's why I mentioned it.
was it always she had to protect Hannah?
Those were the things that I heard her saying, that she needed to, the baby was in danger, and, you know, like, that the baby, and then it started to develop after day, because this, you know, Nimsy died like less than 2 weeks after that,
Okay.
you know?
And so, did she ever articulate who she thought the baby was in danger from?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
But in terms of the things she was saying, it was a paranoia of her needing to protect Hannah.
Yeah, and then there was talk about how the baby is going to die. Like,
Okay.
I heard her say that. I never heard her say, I'm going to hurt the baby. I never heard her say, I'm going to kill the baby. I never heard her say anything like that. I did hear her say, the baby's going to die, I have to protect her.
Okay. And when
So-
she said the baby's going to die, it was in the context of her role to make sure she
protect this
didn't.
child, yeah.
Okay.
Which was still like coming out in this like really delusional, paranoid, schizophrenic, whatever you want to label these things, type of way, manic. Like, she was having real struggles, and it was coming out in this way. But before that day, there was never any like mention of the baby in her delusions. Like, it was about herself, like that, you know, evil was after her, and that I heard her talk about hurting herself a lot. I
Okay.
heard her talk about committing suicide. I
So-
watched her injure herself by punching herself in the face many times. And, you know, I've watched her be violent towards everyone else and never towards the baby. And there was never even mention of the baby until that day.
Okay. So you said prior to that day where Sandra Torres said the baby's going to get taken away, then she started having delusions or paranoia about protecting Hannah.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you just mentioned a second ago that she had delusions or paranoia, or whatever word you want to use, related to her.
Sure.
What were her manifestations related to her that you perceived to be some type of mental health related incident? What types of things would she say about herself?
That she was like, you know, in danger of evil, and like there was all this evil in the world, and but see, there you go. We're talking about like things that are coming out of her. So it's like she wouldn't remember saying these things. Like, she would have these episodes and not remember. But some of the things that she was saying are valid. There is a lot of evil in this world. There's a lot of evil in this room. So it's like, is that a delusion? I don't think so. You know, it's like, is that delusional to say that? Is she in a delusional state when she's making these proclamations? Yes. Is she in a state where she has no memory of what she's doing and is like absent of herself? Because Kawani is a sweet and caring and loving mother. You know, like, I saw her in May, and that's, you know, when Jennifer and I went to Florida, that was the whole thing. Like, we saw this baby, and there was this bright, happy, joyous, cared for child. I've been around enough babies to where I know you can tell when they're not in proper care from their mothers. And there was no sign of that whatsoever. Like, this baby was completely carefree and happy and joyous, and Kawani was an excellent mother. She was attentive, she was warm and nurturing and loving. She would never strike her husband or the sister wives in the way that I saw her later. She would never do these things. Like, I mean, it was just very apparent, and that was in the child. Like, you could see that in the child. It's like, if I had an aunt who was a little on the loud side, you know, it's like, even when her children were little, they were a little on the loud side. You know what I'm saying? Like, children imitate their parents. And so you see it in this child, and you're watching Kawani care for this child, and they're all like fine and wholesome. There's like a lot of wholeness in their group, wholesomeness, and the baby was just fine. Like, I wouldn't have continued a relationship with these people. The foundation, because I like Z. I did, and when I first met him, you know, he's a highly intellectual individual who likes to, and we shared a lot of worldviews that are based on fact, and science, and understanding of, like, you know, teachings and things like that. So we hit it off.
Let me ask you. I don't want to get too far afield
Yeah,
of what the original.
sorry.
That's okay. Sometimes you get going and then we don't remember what the question was.
I'm just trying to give a full scope.
I get it.
Yeah.
So I want to narrow back in on. You said you had seen her punch herself or injure herself.
100%.
Had you ever seen anybody else restrain her or physically assault her?
Not like that.
Okay.
There was this one time where she tried to jump out of a window in the place where we were staying in Virginia Beach, but and Z like hugged her, like basically put his arms around her and stopped her. But I've seen Z sit there and take licks to the face and do nothing. You know, like, I've seen these other girls be abused by Kawani in her delusion. Like I say, she never did that. And when she would come back, she would start crying, and we'd talk about what had happened and how she was attacking people, and she'd start crying, you know, and have like an emotional breakdown. Like, she'd just like, she'd just be like, I'm so sorry, you know, and like, she was just not that way. Like, Kawani's not really like violent like that. Like, she doesn't hit. I mean, I had never seen her do that in a clear, and like, I only saw her do that when she was like losing her mind, as I say.
Okay.
You know, and this just continued to get more and more intense and severe as time went on.
All right. Now, you said, I want to go back a little bit to the incident on the 25th of November.
Yes.
So you said Sandra Torres intervened, that she said things about Hannah's going to be taken away, she's going to
Yep.
have the baby taken away, and that sort of set Chloe on this path where she believed that she had to protect Hannah.
Yes.
How did that incident end on the
incident-
25th?
The incident ended, so like I say, this woman that, you know, is sitting here, Sandra Torres pulls off on the side of the road to rescue this woman, you know, so she would say, and this woman who's sitting here willingly and knowingly gets into a car with her husband and her child and her sister to leave, to escape this belligerent, seemingly psychotic, definitely drunk, and threatening of gun violence individual. And Sandra Torres, like I say, Sandra Torres is trying to block Z from leaving. She's like, we're out of here. Sandra Torres goes into Z's car. Now, this is a random person. You know, keep in mind, this is just some woman that pulls off on the side of the road, decides to make this her business. Kawani's screaming about how she wants to call her mom. We're all standing around. Let her call her mom. No one's trying to prevent her from doing this or do anything except run in the road and cause harm to herself. Please, here's the phone. Like, here's the phone. Call your mom, you know? She never did call her mom. She was just being belligerent, and so is Sandra Torres. And then Sandra Torres gets out of her car and goes over to Z's car and takes the keys out of his ignition. So keep in mind, this is a stranger who pulls off on the side of the road and then goes into a man's car who's being calm and cool and let my wife call her mom if that's what she wants. That's gonna make her feel better. Goes into the car, pulls the keys out of his car, and says, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to jail. We're taking this baby away from you. You guys are disgusting people," like all this stuff. To strangers, she's doing this. Z takes his keys back from her. "Ma'am, this is my property. Give me my keys back." She starts slapping him and assaulting him. They get in the car and leave. Peggy stands, like after they had pulled like a 50-point turn to try to get past this woman, because she's like moving her car to try to block them from leaving. She pulls over to rescue somebody and then tries to stop them from leaving in their own will, and tries to like make a huge scene out of it to try to like hurt them in some kind of way. She pulls off, and then Peggy is standing in front of the car, and basically Sandra Torres started attacking Peggy, beating the crap out of her, slamming her head against the hood of the car. And I sat there and watched that. And now Z and Kwani and Shayla had already pulled away at this point. So I'm just standing there watching Peggy get her ass kicked, pretty much. And I was like, I sat there and I watched for probably like a little bit too long, to be honest with you. That's how I felt about it, because of the way she was getting beaten by this woman. This woman's like very tall and broad-shouldered Nordic woman, and Peggy's this 5'0" petite woman who is not a fighter. This woman has a violent history, you know? And so she's, you know, assaulting Peggy and beating the crap out of her. And so I put my body in between Sandra Torres and Peggy, and then Sandra Torres punched me in the face once, and I went like this, and she punched me in the face again, and I picked her up and I put her down on the ground, and I got in my car and I left, and that was the end of that day.
What do you mean you put her down on the ground?
I picked her up and I forced her body to the ground.
Okay. How would you describe a slam? A push?
I picked her up and I dumped her to the ground, yeah.
You picked her up
Yes.
physically off of
I
the
physically picked this drunken, belligerent woman who had just assaulted 3 people and was threatening us with gun violence up off the ground, slammed her down on the ground, got in my car, and I pulled off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were the police ever involved?
Yes, they were.
Okay. When you were there, were the police involved?
No, they weren't.
Okay. Did you call the police?
No, definitely not.
Why not?
Because I rarely find that justice comes from these types of circumstances when police are involved. And I mean, I just like don't really like you guys.
You've told me that a number of times, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's okay. We don't have to like each other.
That's okay. And that's not personal. I just find that like the legal cult
Sure.
and the legal culture,
Mhm.
you know, we use that word cult to describe culture. It's just a shortened version of that word. I find that the legal cult it brings injustice more often than not.
Were you all collectively as a group sort of not call the police type of people?
Peggy was definitely not call the police type person. I asked her, I was like, you know, you should really call the cops. You know, like she's got a black eye and she's all busted up and hair pulled out of her head by this woman. And I was like, man, you should really call the cops. She's like, I'm not calling the cops. She's like, I don't want anything to do with them. We'll just let this go. We'll just be gone with her, you know, and like we'll just go about my life.
So you said you got in the car and left, and when did you become aware that the police had been involved?
good question. I can't remember, like days later or something like that, or I can't remember, honestly, when I became aware.
Did you ever get interviewed or spoken to about those circumstances of what happened on the 25th?
No, I never did. Nobody
Okay.
ever asked me about this. This is the first time where I've been able to speak plainly before a court or before anyone involved in that openly about the events of that day.
Okay, so you left. At some point, you became aware that someone else had contacted the police.
Now, when Nimsey died on December the 8th, I gave an interview where I spoke about this circumstance to a woman named Tiana Cruz, I think is her name.
With Canton Police Department?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I told her about what had happened and how, because, that day was kind of like a breaking point, and it manifested into, looking at this from like an outside perspective as best I can, without, it's like I'm very emotionally attached to the baby and to, what happened. But it's like that day, Kawani's delusions go from I'm in danger, these things, to the baby's in danger, to the baby's gonna die, they're gonna take it to a dead baby. Like that's what just happened.
Okay.
So I spoke that very clearly, as far as I can remember in my interview, because I was just so in shock that day. Like I couldn't even believe that this has happened. Like it was just like.
All right, let me ask just directly. From that incident on the 25th, did you get charged with anything?
I did.
When did you learn that you were being charged with something?
I got charged with an assault on Sandra Torres.
And when did you learn that that was the case?
April of the following year.
April of 2021?
Yes.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Did you have any contact with law enforcement between November 25th when it happened and when you got arrested in April of 2021?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you just find out because you have a warrant for your arrest?
Yeah, I got pulled over.
You got pulled over and you
Yeah.
got arrested from a warrant from the incident on the 25th?
That's right, from
Okay.
6 months earlier.
Okay, and what happened with that case?
Well, I wanted to go to trial because I thought that I could win in the name of self-defense, and protection of Peggy Schindler. And Peggy was going to come and testify in my trial that she was being attacked belligerently. Z and Shaylee were going to come and testify that this woman was threatening them and being crazy, and she reeked of alcohol. And she's a known drug user because I know her.
Mr. Spillers, I'm not trying to be
Oh.
disrespectful, but we just gotta rein it in. So
Oh.
what happened with your charges?
Oh, I got a misdemeanor.
Okay.
I ended up with a misdemeanor.
Did you plead guilty?
I did plead guilty pursuant to Alfred law.
And what does that mean?
Alfred law, I was told, means that I maintain my innocence, but I was being held in jail. Like they were holding me in jail, and I couldn't afford my bond, and so I waited for years for a trial for that, and they never gave me a trial, and so I finally pled guilty to a misdemeanor, and I think that they just gave me a misdemeanor because they knew that they would lose a trial, and they didn't want to afford that opportunity.
So you did a time served misdemeanor?
Time served. They sentenced me to 75 after 22 months of incarceration.
You were in jail for 22 months?
I was in jail for 10 months, and then I made bond, and then they re-incarcerated me after 8 months. They held me in house arrest for 8 months.
Okay,
All
so
over
that's
this.
house arrest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all over that.
And then you pled guilty under Alford
Yes,
Which
to
is
be
just-
released from jail.
to a misdemeanor.
Do a misdemeanor.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. You mentioned that after that incident, Chloe started having paranoia surrounding needing to protect Hannah. Did you ever witness, perceive, or hear her say anything about ever believing Hannah was a danger to her?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever hear her articulate that she felt threatened by Hannah in any way?
No.
Did you ever hear her say that she needed to defend herself against Hannah?
No.
Okay. Was all of the things that you heard with relation to Hannah her needing to protect Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about the sort of response of Shaylig and Gami and Z and you whenever Chloe would have, whatever you want to call them, episodes.
Sure.
What was the response amongst the group in terms of helping her?
Well, I think mostly it was like trying to find patience, and trying to find a way to keep her calm and get her to, at some points, like stop hurting herself. Those are the times where I've seen Z like hold her arms, because she's punching herself in the face, or she's striking somebody else. And I have seen him like hold her hands, be like, honey, calm down, calm down, calm down, and that was pretty much it. Like I never, we would all respond in our own way. I tried to just be as diligent and patient and kind as I could, and try to talk her, because like I said, she would be, she would come, Kawhi's a pretty open person, like she'd talk plainly and openly about, sexual assault by her own family members and, all of these things that had led her to be this like fractured person, individual rather. And I would, just be there to listen. That's what I was getting at. Like, I'd just be there to listen to her about how she was feeling and if there was anything that I could do, and try to avoid that right hook, if she was trying to, kick and scream. And, but she only did that to me a couple times.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned that incident on the 25th where she ran out in the road.
Yeah.
After that happened, between then and December the 8th, did she go spend time with her parents at her family's house?
No, she didn't.
Was
I
there
recall.
was there ever a period of time where
Oh,
she?
whoa. You mean after Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I thought you meant from October.
No. The incident on
Yes.
November 25th.
Yes.
And she said, "I want to call my mom."
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
She did say that.
Did she ever go see her mom and stay with her mom?
Yeah,
after
actually,
that?
they came later that day. Eric and Renee. That was like the second or third time that I had met them.
Okay.
They came to pick Kawani up.
On what day? The 25th?
It was either that or the next day.
The 25th or the 26th?
Yeah, right around there. I can't. It's 4 years.
Okay.
So you're at like.
You're
doing
doing
the best
you're
I
doing
can.
fine. So either on the 25th or the 26th, Eric and Renee Driver came and picked up Kawani.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did they come to?
They came to Peggy's.
To Peggy's house? Okay. And that was in North Carolina?
Yes.
All right. And where were they living at that time? The drivers?
Oh gosh, Tennessee.
Tennessee. So they
Yeah,
went from Tennessee.
Knoxville, as far as I know.
They went from Tennessee to North Carolina and they picked up Chloe.
That's right.
All right. Did Hannah stay with you guys?
She stayed with Z.
She stayed with Z. Okay.
Yes.
And to your knowledge, did Chloe go back to her parents' house?
Yeah, she did for like a few days.
Okay. And when and how did she rejoin the group after she went to her parents for a couple of days on the 25th or 26th?
I'm pretty. She kept in contact with her husband, and then I think he went to go pick her up after that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
were they still communicating? Z and she were still communicating?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he went to go pick her up. Do you know when that was?
Shortly after that, a few days, something like that.
Okay. A few days after Thanksgiving?
A few days after Thanksgiving, yeah.
Okay.
I think she got really jarred by that whole thing with Sandra Torres.
Okay.
Like I say, there was like a lot of dramatic shifts in her wording and the things that she would say after that.
Okay.
And yeah, like that was it.
All right. And then tell me about Thanksgiving. Where did you spend Thanksgiving 2020?
Oh, I was there. We did Peggy's, and then I was at my parents for the rest of the day.
Was Chloe around for Thanksgiving 2020 or was she with her parents?
That was that day. That was Thanksgiving Day.
What was Thanksgiving Day?
The whole event on November 25th.
The 25th was Thanksgiving Day?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure that was Thanksgiving Day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would have been after Thanksgiving that Chloe went to her parents.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
And then you said it was a couple of days maybe she was with her parents, and then Z went and got her and she came back to the group?
She came back. Yeah, she did.
Okay. And when she came back, what was her demeanor like?
Pretty much the same, really. She's a regular Kawani a lot of the time, even though at this point in time she had become kind of degraded. Like she was like, her whole like air had become different. Like she was like really like frustrated with herself. Like she was just like frustrated with what's happening, and she was sad. You could tell. And then there was like this whole different air about her that I think, like I said, was part of the whole interaction with Sandra Torres. Where she just became, I don't know, she just got this idea in her head about Nimsy after that. There was just like a lot of
About protecting Nimsy?
protecting Nimsy, yeah.
Okay.
And like the danger to the baby, that they're gonna take the baby. All of these things that had never really come out of her before, that I heard,
Okay.
And I wasn't with them like 24/7, but I was with them a lot, like a
Right.
lot. So.
Okay. You said that she first sort of started having those types of, I don't know what to call them, episodes, paranoia, whatever it is, in September of 2020?
Well, no, it was before that, actually. It was really during the summer. Like Z, I was talking to Z pretty regularly. We would just, talk about all kinds of stuff. And he spoke of his wives openly, with me, and how Kawani had really started, it was really in July when he began to, because I think it was in June that I met them at the river that day.
With her parents?
With her parents.
Okay.
And she was fine that day. Like she was, behaving normally, providing excellent care for Nimsy, being an excellent mother. And yeah, I just,
And let me ask you this. At any point, did you become aware of her getting any type of counseling?
no,
Okay.
definitely not.
What's that?
No.
Okay.
She did not.
Did you know about her doing anything on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
I did not know about that.
Okay. And
Was she doing that? I don't know.
If you don't, I have to ask the question.
Okay,
So
that's
if you
fine.
don't know,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
completely
know.
fine.
I didn't know that. No.
Okay.
I didn't know.
And we already talked about kind of the group's views on drugs and sort of the holistic approach.
Yeah, Z did not want her to be institutionalized. That's for sure.
He did not want her to be
He did not want her to be
institutionalized.
institutionalized, probably for the same reason as like the institutionalization culture probably doesn't offer like, she's just surrounded by 3 or 4 people who really love her and care about her. And instead of just being a patient that gets doped up with medication and spoken to once a day for an hour by some doctor that she doesn't know, Z was really trying to do this in more of like a wholesome family way to offer Kwani healing.
When she was just her normal self,
Yeah.
what was her relationship with Z? How did she interact with him? How did she treat him? What did you observe during
like
this
I say,
time?
it was like when Jennifer and I went to Florida, it's like there's like a lot of love there.
Talk to me about like Thanksgiving time, December. What was the nature of their relationship around that time?
I mean, sometimes she's around and it's the same. Like there's a very loving nature and a very there's like a lot of companionship, and between her and the other girls, I remember we were at my house right before, because they found a house in Florida. Because that's one of the things that Kwani was talking about, especially towards the end in October. She's like, we need to find a house. We need to find a house so I can be better, so I can find a place to be and just be in one place all the time, so I can be in this place and I can heal and I can get better.
Did she want a more stable lifestyle than traveling all
Not
over the place?
before, but no, I think she was just fine with it until she started to really degrade.
Okay.
And then she realized, she would come back from these episodes and we'd tell her what's happening, what had happened. She has no memory of it. She's crying and being all apologetic and, troubled by her own mind and how little control she had.
She believed finding a house and putting down some roots somewhere would be beneficial for her?
Yeah, and that really started to come out in October. After we came back from Virginia Beach, I was letting them stay at my house and she started to talk about that, even incoherently. She's like, we need to find a place. And so they had found a house in Florida that was for sale.
All right.
And they were going to go buy it and live there.
All right.
And Z had already called about it, and it was in Florida, and we were moving there that day on December the 8th.
On December the 8th, y'all were headed from North Carolina to Florida to move into a house.
To move. We were moving them. I rented a U-Haul in my name for them.
Okay.
And they had all of their stuff packed up in the U-Haul. They were moving to Florida. We stopped by Jerry's house on the way down.
All right. So on December the 8th, how many days, if we start on December the 8th and we track backwards, how many days had you been with them? Had you been with them continuously from November 25th?
No, continuously since the middle of October when I went to go visit them.
Okay, so you spent every day with them?
Almost every day, yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah, they were staying at my house. Like I say, I went to Virginia Beach in October. In the middle of, I think I arrived there on October 11th or something like that. I stayed there until after Halloween, so it was the better part of a month, because I remember celebrating Halloween or walking around for Halloween down in Virginia Beach. And then we came back to Asheville, and they were staying at my house. So, I'd come by all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
Sometimes I'd stay in the van and I'd come in, I'd walk in and we'd talk about feelings in the morning, and which I thought was great.
Okay.
And there was a real camaraderie and just family style life there.
All right. And as it relates to sort of the efforts to assist Chloe, did she also believe against drugs and alcohol or things like that?
Totally. I mean, she grew up, like I say, being, using drugs by her own accord, by her own account.
Okay.
From the time when she was 9, 10 years old, using cocaine every day. And she's very against drugs.
Did
Yes.
you have any knowledge during this period of time about her desire to try to utilize CBD?
Yes.
And what did you know about that?
So I found that out because she was looking for some kind of medical assistance, and Z was just not having her be on prescription medication.
Okay.
Because, and I agree with him in this regard that, that because she would come back from these episodes, it's not like she was like this all the time. And this was a recently developing thing.
So when you say it's not like she was like this all the time, what in terms
she
of...
wasn't psychotic, losing her mind,
Well, in terms of quantifying how many episodes like that you saw or how often that would happen.
Right, yeah, I wasn't around them all the time at that point, but I know that it really started to get bad in July.
Okay.
So by the time September came around, I saw her behaving erratically. She struck Z for one of the first times she had ever struck her husband when I was there in September. But Z's perspective was a more natural homeopathic type thing where he didn't want to institutionalize her, and he didn't want her to be on drugs. He wanted her to work through this and come to a healing on her own. And she was about that too, but she was also looking for, so they decided on CBD.
Okay.
They decided to try to use CBD, and Kwani had ordered some CBD offline.
She ordered it offline?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you said that they were both kind of about not medicating traditionally, but that they had explored other options and arrived at CBD.
And arrived at CBD, that's right, to
Okay.
try to just give her some assistance.
Okay. And the CBD that she ordered offline, do you know anything about that?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I know she just ordered some CBD. She had been taking CBD, and that a package arrived.
From just like a traditional CBD?
Yeah,
manufacturer?
just something online that she
Okay.
ordered.
All right.
Yep.
And at any time, did you provide her with anything in that regard?
I did. I had some CBD that I bought from a woman in Asheville, North Carolina, that I had purchased because my dad's cousin had cancer. He was using a Rife machine, and he had become cancer-free by using the Rife machine, and he was interested in taking some CBD. And so I bought some CBD from a woman. I could tell you who it was if you want.
Was it a legitimate CBD manufacturer? Was it
Yeah.
some shady,
No.
back
this is-
alley? What was it?
No, definitely not. This is a woman who worked in the hemp industry. This is a product that was being sold on store shelves that she had in abundance. And so I bought some of it from her, but this is like a legal product that I bought from her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in which state?
What's that?
What state?
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Okay.
Yes.
So it was a off-the-shelf, legally manufactured hemp.
That's what I
product.
was told by this woman who works in the hemp industry.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you said you bought that for your
I
uncle?
bought that for my dad's cousin.
Your dad's cousin.
It
Okay.
would be my cousin too. It's his first cousin, my
All
dad's
right.
first cousin.
And so you had some left over, or what was the situation?
No, I had some. I was taking some of it.
Okay, you took it.
Yeah, I did.
And what did you take it for?
I was taking it because I have shoulder injuries from jujitsu.
Okay.
And I was trying to, and I had quit smoking weed at that point, and I had been without, I have been clean and sober off drugs for a while. And and that was something that happened before I met Z. Like I quit smoking cigarettes and doing all kinds of things, but before I even met these people, like I said, that was another attraction, that we had, like a commonality that we had, that we were both sober.
So the CBD that you purchased from the woman in the hemp industry that you subsequently gave to Kuwani was
Yeah.
CBD you had also personally used?
I had.
Okay.
Yeah, and I used it because I have a shoulder injury and a neck injury from jujitsu, and I was trying to alleviate some of my pain.
Had you taken CBD before?
Yes, I had.
And anything special about this particular CBD?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's fairly like non-invasive. It's CBD. you
Okay.
know?
And what is it about CBD that sort of comports with your views or beliefs about?
Well, I was just trying something. I was just trying to take it and just see if it offered me any relief, because I had become really opposed to cannabis marijuana at that point in my life. Even though cannabis marijuana had been a part of my life for a while, but I had stopped using it and I had completely turned against it, which I think is, I think it needs to be, I think there need to be stricter laws on marijuana, and it needs to go backwards on this whole legalization thing.
Well, for the jury that may not know, what's the difference between CBD and marijuana?
Okay, so the cannabis plant has, from my understanding of it, the cannabis plant has around 85 different cannabinoids found within it. And cannabis hemp is different from cannabis marijuana in that it's harvested for because it's abundant in CBD. And marijuana is like a hallucinogenic drug, which is heavy in THC. So this CBD that I gave to Z and Kuwani, which I wouldn't have even suggested that, but they had already ordered CBD. Like they were already exploring this. And I was like, hey, I have this here. Would you like some of it? And they talked about it and they decided, yes, we will try this that you have. And so it was made from hemp, not marijuana. And it's like I say, it's a product that, that you can buy on the shelf. I bought it from a woman who works in the legal hemp industry in North Carolina.
Okay.
So.
All right, this is a good time for a lunch recess. So we're going to be in recess for lunch until 1 o'clock. Leave us your notepads. Don't talk to one another about the case or let anybody talk to you. You will have the lunch that you ordered in the jury room. You can take a break, go outside, walk around if you want to, but be back in the jury room at 1 o'clock. Thank you.